Hey everyone, Mark here with North of the Wall Garage. If you're interested in just seeing the configurator portion of this video of the 2026 Honda Passport, fast forward to about 8 minutes in. Otherwise, stick around for my introduction of the platform and some interesting things I've noticed in comparing trim levels. So one of the more interesting releases coming up in the next year or two is the 2026 Honda Passport. Obviously, I've talked a ton on my channel about Toyota and Lexus, but I think it's interesting, Honda really, as the other major Japanese manufacturer, where I think shares a lot of the same qualities of Toyota and Lexus, where reliability is not an issue, residual values are strong, and I think overall Honda excels in design. And really, we typically see that with the Civic and the Accord, two great passenger vehicles that have had a long storied history in the US. But as SUVs, and in particular off-road SUVs, get more popular, I think it's interesting to see different manufacturers take a stab at this. And what this video will really focus on is the configurator, the different options, and how I would spec a 2026 Passport. I just think it's an interesting conversation about the truck itself, is that, fully loaded, these are coming out at about $55,000, as you'll see shortly in the configurator. And it's a lot of vehicle for the money. This is a very tech-forward platform. Now, is it as hardcore off-road as some of the offerings from Toyota and Lexus? The answer is no. It doesn't have, any of the really trick locking differentials or any of the major off-road features. But with the all-terrain tires, the Honda reliability, pretty potent engine, good transmission, good tech, this will get 99.9% of people where they want to go. I think unless you're doing really serious off-roading, rock crawling, Moab type, Western U.S. trails, this Honda would work just fine as an overlander, frankly as a daily commuter, and really serves an interesting spot as a effective, utilitarian, reliable, probably great in all sorts of different weather conditions vehicle for a pretty reasonable price. So today, let's get into the configurator, let's look at the different options, and just kind of talk through the 2026 Honda Passport. Right off the bat, I think it's valuable just to look at the different trim options, and certainly there are many, but really it's a variation on a theme. There's the RTL trim, and then there's the TrailSport trim. The TrailSport is the one that we're seeing all the press images of. That's the impressive one with the all-terrain tires, whereas the RTL, seemingly the same vehicle, but just less of the off-road slant. So you're not going to get the all-terrain tires, and you're not going to get all the different, I think, off-road technology that's involved. Looking at the features and specs comparatively, it's pretty interesting. I mean, you do get all of the drive modes with the RTL models, and that's standard across the line. Again, as I noted earlier, with the TrailSport, you start to see those all-terrain tires kick in, which look pretty nice, the 275/60 R18. So again, on those 18-inch wheels, which I appreciate, good amount of sidewall with those tires, and that's really what we want to see. I think in my opinion, out of any SUV, big wheels, I don't care if you're talking about an Escalade or a luxury SUV, it doesn't matter to me. I think there needs to be more sidewall. It makes the SUV much more usable, much more resilient against potholes, makes the ride more comfortable. And I'm not looking for a performance car here for this type of spec, this type of SUV. So for me, I'm going with more of the sidewall, and we'll certainly talk more about that as we get into the configurator. But I think that's very appealing. They're offering this with a good tire right out of the factory. Towing capacity across the board is 5,000 pounds. This is not body on frame, so I think that's a pretty reasonable tow target. It's a 285 horsepower V6. Frankly, it reminds me of the third gen Toyota V6, which was a 3.5 liter, around that power number as well. So this is basically what they put into the Passport. Now, is that certainly as stout as other offerings as you go up in price levels across the industry? Definitely not. I think 285 horsepower is pretty modest. But again, this isn't a race car, and I think it certainly will accomplish what it needs to accomplish for the price and the power ratings. So on every trim level, you also get trailer stability assist. So they've certainly thought about the folks that are towing. But if you look at my GX550 towing video that I've posted with my Lexus, I've exceeded the 5,000 pounds pretty quickly with just mulch. So that's not the greatest tow rating, but certainly I think that'll allow you to do small trailers, maybe a lightweight boat, some other things like that, where you can certainly hook something up to the hitch and it's not going to be a problem. Heated seats across, and of course all the tech is across the board. The other aspect is, again, it's an all-wheel drive system. It's not a true 4x4. So across the board, every single Passport will be all-wheel drive. you get what they're calling trail torque logic, which is probably similar to Toyota's crawl control. I'm sure it'll work a little bit differently being an all-wheel drive system versus a true 4x4 with mechanical differentials. It'll probably work similarly to Toyota's crawl control, where you're just braking different wheels and picking the wheel that has the right traction at a low speed, and the computer's doing that for you as you kind of go down the trail or go down any sort of obstacle. So in that sense, I suppose, mechanical locking diffs aren't really much of an issue because you're engaging those manually in the Toyota products if you're certainly doing that type of stuff. So this is just a computer program that'll kind of take over for you in certain off-road situations and find the traction that it needs. 10-speed automatic across the board, which Honda tends to make and use great transmissions, so I'd be pretty confident in Honda's version of this 10-speed posted here. Gear ratios are all the same too. It doesn't matter if you have the TrailSport or RTL. It's the same across the board. And then really quickly, I think finishing on stuff that people care about, the fuel mileage. So the RTL with the smaller tire is rated at 19 city, 25 highway, 21 combined. The TrailSport, as you step up into a bigger tire, is 18 city, 23 highway, 20 combined. 18.5 gallon fuel tank, which again, I hate this trend of going with smaller fuel tanks across the board for SUVs. I don't understand the point of limiting range on an internal combustion vehicle. That is the greatest advantage of internal combustion over EVs is extended range, right? And range is really a function of two things. It's fuel efficiency, which is the miles per gallon, right? The fuel ratings. And then there's capacity. It's fuel efficiency, miles per gallon, times how many gallons you're carrying. So the more gallons you can carry, the farther you can go. It's as simple as that. So frankly, I'd like to see bigger tanks come back. Again, I go back to my 2006 Mercedes, a sedan that runs a diesel, but it has a 21-gallon tank in a sedan. And back then, sedans were smaller. So that 2006 E-Class is the size today of a small sedan. It has a 21-gallon fuel tank. Makes so much more sense, makes it so much more usable. So really wish the industry would go back that direction, but it certainly doesn't seem that way. A lot of these fuel tanks as well are kept small because the hybridization potential of future platforms, so they wouldn't have to necessarily shrink the fuel tank to add a hybrid battery. It's kind of already small. They can probably fit a battery in. Not saying that's the plan here for the Passport. I haven't heard anything like that and certainly seen any rumors about a Passport hybrid. But again, I just think it's across the board. Smaller fuel tanks are being manufactured in the industry. One advantage here is because it's just a normal, naturally aspirated V6. You're looking at regular unleaded fuel, so that's a nice advantage there as well. Just quick take on this. I suppose fuel economy isn't that impressive, but for an all-motor car, if you will, I think it's not too bad and it's livable. Certainly, I think the city is more impressive than the highway. 18 miles per gallon in the city with bigger off-road tires is fairly reasonable. But again, if you're going to go this direction, it would certainly be nice just to have a little more fuel capacity, a little more range. All right, so getting into the configurator, what I appreciate that Honda has done here, and this is similar to what Toyota does, is they're very specific and careful about the trims, and basically you pick a trim and there's not that many options. So the build process is pretty simple, but what I like about that is it's pretty easy to find the SUV truck that you're looking for because there just aren't that many options. So there's really a finite number of combinations here that you can produce. Really, color is the main factor. It's color, interior color, maybe a couple wheel options, but that's really it. So if I was buying this vehicle, I think there are some advantages trim-wise to going up to the TrailSports. If you go to the TrailSport Elite, for example, you start to get more luxury features like the integrated rear door sunshades, which we have a picture of here. When you step up to the TrailSport, you do get the skid plates, you get the recovery hooks, you get a couple other off-road features. The suspension is different across the trims. When you go up to the TrailSport, you're starting to get what they're calling just off-road suspension. If we go back to our features here, or our comparison here across the different trim levels, I think that's really the differentiator. So the Passport across the line from a drivetrain perspective is the same, and really from a tech perspective is the same, but you start to see changes with suspension. So again, those skid plates being on the TrailSport models only, what they're calling off-road tuned suspension on the TrailSport models only, that's probably a little bit of a stiffer spring, heavier spring potentially. It would be interesting to get a little more literature on what exactly that is, or what they're calling the off-road tuned suspension. And there's plenty of videos around that kind of walk through this car in person. I'm sure that's part of the detail there. But really the difference here, skid plates, different spring or shock composition, And that's it. You're getting a different tire. But across the board, like the TrailSport is pretty consistent amongst its trims. So back to the configurator. When you work your way up the trim levels, you do get more luxury features as you go into the TrailSport Elite and Elite Blackouts. The Elite is not available on the RTL, as you'll see. So as you get into the Elite trims, you get the heated and ventilated seats. There's heated seats across the board, but TrailSport Elite adds the ventilated. And then you get the Bose audio as well with the sunshades that I mentioned earlier. The Blackout is literally just a blackout package, so there's really no difference between the TrailSport Elite and the TrailSport Elite Blackout, other than some black trim, black wheels, black badges. So if I was building this vehicle myself and going to buy one, I would just go with the TrailSport Elite. I'll save the $1,000 on blacking some stuff out. And honestly, I think some alloy accents are kind of nice versus just going full black. All right, so the 285 horsepower V6 all-wheel drive with the 10-speed transmission, that is the only powertrain available, and then we get into different colors. I actually really do like this ash green metallic that's featured here. It looks a little bit silvery in these images, but I think in person there's a little more of a green sheen to it. I also am a sucker for a red truck. I always love a good red truck. My first Tacoma was red. Love a red truck. It just fits, I think, the personality of the vehicle. And then the press color is the orange that you're seeing here. So sunset orange is really what they're featuring. And it's in all the press videos that you saw earlier in the video. So if I was going to go ahead and build this, I think the ash green metallic is kind of interesting. It's a little bit muted, but I like that color. I think it would look nice with the yellow DRLs that we're seeing in the press videos as well. That's a feature of the TrailSport. The other aspect here is, depending on your exterior color, of course, your interior color will be limited. Earlier when I was playing around with this configurator, I really liked the blue exterior, which is no charge too, so that's kind of nice. But then you go to interior color, and your only option is the gray perforated leather, which is nice. I actually think it looks a little white, which is definitely ideal. I think gray leather gives me like rental car vibes, so it's nice to have. They're calling this gray, but at least in the images it looks a little more white, which I think is nice. If this was decidedly gray, I think I would not like that. Regardless, I want options with my interior, so I'm going to go back. I'm going to hit that ash green metallic, and then I'm going to get an interior color here. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I'm definitely a fan of contrast in the interior. So for me, I would pick the brown perforated leather option. I think the brown contrasted with the black and the different streams here looks pretty nice. There's some kind of interesting like hammered carbon material that they're putting on the doors, which looks pretty cool. And you can see it's also on the cup holder and the center console here. Do I think that's real hammered carbon? No way. But it definitely gives that vibe. I think it's kind of cool looking. And looking back into the back seat as well, you've got the nice two-tone brown and black seats. And frankly, I think they've done a better job executing on this than Toyota has in some of their other models where they do two-tone seats. I think Honda here just looks a little cleaner. I think the black stripe down the middle sort of ties it all together. It doesn't look quite hacked together, if you will. So I think they've done a really nice job in this interior. Looks pretty smart with the brown, and this would be my choice going forward. Now, no cost to any of these interior colors. You could pick any of them. There's no additional cost. So again, pretty nice there. You're just pretty much selecting a color, which paint colors are an extra charge depending on what you go with. So the ash green metallic is an extra $455. The standard colors are the crystal black pearl, the modern steel metallic, and the obsidian blue pearl. Those are no charges. As soon as you get into ash green metallic, it's a $455 charge, and any other color besides the first three that I mentioned would be that $455 upcharge. So getting into wheels here, I like the stock wheels. I love that you can get the 18-inch white alloy wheels. That, frankly, might be a little bit too bold for me, but I love that that's an option. You can get that on like the Land Rover Defender as well. You can get white wheels. I just think that's really cool. And that's kind of trendy. It's an off-road thing, and it harkens back, I think, almost like a rally vibe to the old days. So I like the white wheels, but if I was picking this myself, honestly, I think I'd probably stick with the standard stock wheel. This is what the black wheels look like. Black's nice too. I certainly like the rim design a little bit better than the standard. To me, I think that's clean enough. Leaves the door open to change the wheels up later. So I'd pick the standard. So let me see if I can strip this out here. There we go. So I'd roll with the standard moving forward. I think that's just fine. So getting into packages, if you see here, these manufacturer packages really aren't anything other than appearance packages and maybe some minor convenience things. For example, the adventure package comes with a tailgate table shelf, a light, probably in the trunk, and a molly panel set, and then like a roof rack. But again, those are all things you can add either aftermarket or after the fact. That does not have to necessarily come from the factory. Black emblems, self-explanatory. Function package is really just floor mats and a cargo cover with a cargo net, which are nice to have, but again, you can add that later. The HPD package, this is like Honda's version of TRD, although it's really, again, more of a branding exercise. So it's a little less indicative of mechanical changes and more of just an appearance package. So they put some different emblems on the skid plate, the fenders. You get a hood decal, a little too loud for me. Feels a little bro racer, so I would not add that package either. There's pet protection, which is just a different element of different cargo features, seat back protectors, cargo tray. I think that's $750 is way too much for those items. There's a barrier, I guess, too, with the cargo pack, with between the cargo area and the seating area. But again, $750 for that I think is a little rich. And then the tow package, which just comes with the hitch ball, the hitch mount, and the undercargo organizer. So I would add the tow package. Let's just make sure that this thing's ready to tow from the factory. My factory optioned 2026 Passport TrailSport Elite is coming in at $53,125. Pretty reasonable. You get into accessories. It's all the stuff that generally I would not add. I would be curious to know if Honda is similar to Toyota, where they just slap these onto these vehicles haphazardly, and it's a nice profit center for the dealer. Wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Having said that, there's really no accessory here that would break the bank. These are all in the hundreds of dollars. I guess the rock sliders, which is cool that they offer that, by the way. The rock sliders are the most expensive option. So it's cool that they offer the rock sliders. I think that's the most interesting option and the most expensive one for $915. They are aluminum, which is interesting. Typically when we see a rock slider, it would be steel. Some will run aluminum protection. It's lighter weight. Little more resistant to rusting, but I think the industry standard here is probably more for steel. The rock sliders appear to be made out of aluminum, and then there's a 1.5 millimeter thick stainless steel plate over them. So I guess you sort of get a little bit of the steel, just the steel advantages from like a dent perspective. But overall, the supporting elements here of the sliders are aluminum. Wouldn't add that though. You don't really need sliders, again, unless you're going over rocks and doing different stuff, which is really more of a open country, west side of the country type issue. On the East Coast, where I'm here, deep snow, sand, those are the items, mud, that I see the most. So for me, I really don't need a slider. Looking at interior accessories, it's your typical floor mats, cargo net, cargo utility light. These are all the different things that get added in those packages that I showed earlier. And then electrical auto-dimming mirror, which is kind of criminal that they charge you for that, and that's an extra for $430. I guess I would take that because that's really annoying to have a manual dimmed mirror. I think that's like 1990s-esque for that. Engine block heater, I don't need that in my area. So fully loaded with everything added, a couple accessories here, which I would require $53,555. Compelling price, no question about it. Now, is this a true off-roader the way that Honda wants you to believe? I guess the answer is somewhere in between. This is certainly much more stout and much more advanced than any of the Korean offerings that would certainly sell you on being off-roaders. For example, like the Kia Telluride, Hyundai Palisade, very different vehicles. I suppose now this is most comparable to the Telluride. The Telluride, they will try to sell you as an off-roader. That has a car suspension in it. Those shocks would be clapped out after a little bit of off-road use. The Passport seems much more stout from a components perspective than anything from Hyundai and Kia. So I would be much more inclined to go this direction with the TrailSport Elite. Once upon a time, this could be more comparable to like the Nissan Pathfinder, the new Nissan Pathfinder, but the new Nissan Pathfinder is so smoothed over, it's so crossover. This feels like a nice bridge in between true off-roader and just normal utilitarian crossover SUV. So really quick, we'll just get back into the configurator. I'll just build an RTL for the heck of it so you can see the difference. So we'll go RTL towing, which is the top trim in RTL. Notice RTL does not have an Elite option. So RTL towing is the top trim aside from the blackout. We don't care about the blacked out badges, all that stuff. So I'm just going to go RTL towing. So you can see much more pedestrian appearance without all the skid plates. You still get the nice hood, the nice boxy architecture here, but it is a little bit dumbed down. A lot of plastic here. A little bit more of an economy car vibe. So can't say I'm the biggest fan of this packaging. Now this is starting quite a bit cheaper than the TrailSport Elite model. You know, you're $8,000 less here. So let's just see where this ends up. I'm going to go design, looking at colors here. There are some colors that are kept to the TrailSport only, as you'll see. The one that I selected earlier, that ash green, is missing. You can get red, you can get sonic gray pearl, you can get platinum white pearl. I would probably go with the obsidian blue in this case if I'm not going with the off-road model. This looks to me the most upmarket color out of everything available. Interior color, you do get the same gray leather as shown earlier in the TrailSport, so that interior is pretty nice. You're not changing that aspect, at least from the seat design. Now, I think the TrailSport had a little more going on with the headrest and shoulder rest area. There was a little more contrast there and interest, but overall I think this looks pretty nice for what it is. And then getting into wheels, I think these stock wheels are pretty horrendous. I think I would actually add the rugged black wheels just to make it a little more interesting. Again, if this was my truck, I would definitely add a different tire as well. But that's the whole point of really going for the TrailSport, aside from a little bit nicer suspension, a little bit nice interior features. Packages are exactly the same as compared to the TrailSport models, and that just speaks to that these are really accessory packages, nothing more to them. Speaks to the fact that these are really just accessory packages. There's not anything more to these. There's not special factory added things here. These are just accessory packages. So again, I'd add the tow package for the towing ability in the car. And then lastly, with accessories, we'll go back. We'll add the auto dimming mirror. They're all the same accessories that are offered on the TrailSport versus the RTL. So the 2026 Passport RTL towing, I'm seeing a total of just under $48,000. So for me, I think this vehicle is much more interesting in the TrailSport configuration. I think the TrailSport is pretty cool looking. I think the off-road tires are doing a lot of work here in terms of making this vehicle look interesting. But I think they did a really nice job with the more boxy appearance. Nice digital dash here. The TrailSport looks compelling, especially in a nice bright color. So I'm a fan. I think it's definitely interesting. So let me know what you think in the comments. I'm definitely interested in this vehicle. I think it was a good, earnest attempt by Honda to start to bridge the gap back from just typical crossover into the more off-road space. Honda does have a history with the Passport of being body on frame and 4x4, so this is definitely a change towards that direction. Of course, this is unibody, this is all-wheel drive, so this doesn't have mechanical locking diffs or anything like that, but this is a start here for Honda to go back in that direction, and I certainly think it's a more compelling offering than, say, the Kia Telluride, for example, which is truly much more in the car crossover standard type SUV range. So thanks again, everyone, for watching. Appreciate all of the comments, likes, subscriptions. I just think it's interesting to play around these configurators, see how automotive manufacturers are packaging, especially their new vehicles. The cost, of course, the options, and the way that they're trying to sell, in this case, the 2026 Honda Passport. So thanks as always, and looking forward to seeing the next one.